Welcome today for this Frosty winter print class. I'm a bit, as we say it in Dutch, off the boiling because of the technical issues, and I'm trying to figure out what I have to do now. But I'm just going to start, and I hope that you can also see the screen with my hands, and I hope that that is the main screen. And if not, please, host, can you put my hands?
I'm changing it. Hold on. I'm sorry. I had to find it. So I'm replacing it now. You're good to go.
There we are. Okay. So this is it. Today we're going to make Frosty winter prints. And here are a couple of the samples. And I know some of you are here because you saw me doing these prints on my Instagram feed. And so if you're not following me on Instagram, you can. My Instagram name is at the bottom of the screen. And then you always know when I will do a Zoom class for Michaels and Gelli Arts. So my name is Birgit Koopsen. I'm brand ambassador for Gelli Arts. And today I'm going to work with the Gelli Arts 5x7 inch gel plate. I'm also going to use alcohol ink, which is Ranger alcohol ink. And I'm going to print on white card, which is from Recollections. This is the 4.5 by 6.5 inch paper. And this is really nice to print on because it's sturdy, but it's very, very smooth. So you don't get any texture in your prints, which I really like. And yeah, I'm just going to start, I think. So because I'm going to work with alcohol ink, I'm going to wear gloves because this is not really good for your skin. And besides that, it really stains. So it's better to wear gloves. So to protect myself. What I said about stains on the skin, that also goes for the gel plate. So alcohol inks can stain the gel plate, especially the yellows and the oranges will definitely stain your gel plate, and it will get a nice yellow color. If you like yellow, then it's a nice yellow color. You will never get it off. Once the plate is stained with alcohol ink, you will never get it off. Not with baby oil, not with soap, not with anything. But it does not affect any future prints. So it's not a bad thing unless you don't like the color, then and you don't want the stains on your plate, then maybe it's better not to use alcohol inks on it. Or maybe you could have one plate dedicated to alcohol inks and have a plate that stays clean for your other products. So to create these prints, and I'm going to start with these two, I used alcohol ink and cling film, the kind of plastic that you use to wrap your food in. So it can be the cheapest, thinnest one you can find. You don't have to use an expensive one. Anyone will work. So what you're going to do is just spread some alcohol ink on the plate. And I used mostly purples and blues and teal because I wanted the prints to look frosty. But of course you could use different colors, any color of the rainbow, and get prints that are more like stained glass maybe. And if I have enough time, I might try one. But for now, I'm going to stick to the frosty colors. So or maybe I should say which colors I'm using. So this is the purple twilight. And I've also put on there some, I think it was this one, denim. And I think the patina, or maybe it was the clover, one of these two, I think. So now I'm going to spread the alcohol ink on my plate with a brayer. And I'm not really going to brayer, because then I would just mix all the colors and there would not be no difference between the colors. I would just create one new color instead of a variety of colors that are blend together. So I'm just gently touching the ink until it's like all blended. And then I take a piece of the cling film and I'm just going to wrinkle it and put it on top of that alcohol ink. Now, alcohol ink usually dries quite fast, but you can probably imagine that underneath the plastic, it will take a while, depending on how warm it is in your room and also on how much ink you put on the plate. So it needs to be dry before you pull away the cling film. And I'm going to show you why. Because as long as the alcohol ink is still wet, it will just blend together with the colors that are next to it. So you, when I lift up the cling film, you will lose the pattern that it created because the ink is still wet and it will just flow. So I'm going to lift it up and you will see that here is there are no sharp lines in there. It's just like pooling together again. So you really need this ink to be dry. So I usually, I have a couple of gel plates. So I usually just create a couple and put them aside and then leave them to dry, sometimes even overnight. But I would say about half an hour to an hour, it should be dry. And you can check it by pushing the plastic down with your finger. And if the ink is still moving underneath your finger, then you know that it's not dry. Or you can try to lift up a tiny edge and see if the texture is there or if it starts flowing again. So you have to make sure that everything is really dry. So that means that I cannot take this one and show you right away how it works. But of course, I am prepared and I made some already this morning. So here I have one that I created exactly the same as the one I just did. And I'm going to remove the cling film right now. And it's stuck a little bit to the plate, but you can quite easily remove it. And I think this sound is so satisfying. Am I the only one, or are there more people that find this satisfying? So now you can see that there is this pattern already in the dried ink. So to lift the ink from the plate, I need a layer of paint because you cannot lift any dry product from the gel plate. You always need a wet layer that sticks to the paper to lift up whatever is on your plate. So you can use a variety of dry products on your plate, but you always need that layer of paint to lift it up. And in this case, I'm going to use Liquitex Basic Acrylic. And here I have the titanium white, but I could also add in a little bit of light blue permanent, for instance, to add an extra color to the print. because in all the areas where there's no ink on the plate, the color of paint will show. And even in the more covered areas, you will see a little bit of the paint shining through because the alcohol ink is so translucent. So if you don't want to change the color of the ink completely, then you rather use white and a color that's already a bit in there to keep it the same colors as you used. But you can also do something crazy and use a completely different color and see what happens then. So I'm not going to apply the paint directly to the plate, because when I go over the dried alcohol ink with my brayer, it will probably stick to my brayer, and I will just lift it up from the plate before I can pull the print. So what I will do is I will take a sheet of paper, but that could also be like a craft sheet or anything like that. And I'm going to roll out the paint on there. And I'm going to make sure that my brayer is completely covered with paint before I let it get in contact with the plate. So I'm just going to roll out the paint. And as you can see, it's now complete. The brayer is completely covered with paint. And now I can carefully apply it to the plate. So
Birgit, somebody
yes.
just asked, can you get the same effect that you got with the alcohol inks with the acrylic paint? And Marcia answered, but I wanted to hear what you were thinking.
Okay, so you can get this effect with acrylic paint, but it's a little bit different. Acrylic paint is not as translucent as the alcohol ink is. So I think with alcohol ink, it looks more like ice. And when you use acrylic paint, then it's more like wrinkled paper or something. I'm not really sure how to explain, but that's my idea. So if you want that icy look, then the alcohol ink will give you that more than when you use acrylic paint. So here we have the first print. And I am actually not like really satisfied with this print, because when I keep it closer to the camera, maybe you can see that there are these like little white areas. And that's because I use too much paint. If you look very closely to my plate, you can see that there's some paint left behind, which means that it's not all picked up by the paper. And that usually happens when you have too much paint on your plate. So you have to be really careful that your layer of paint is very thin in order to pick up every detail from the plate. But that doesn't mean that I can't use this this print. I can still use it. It's still pretty. And I could even go in there with, for instance, like these Derwent Inktense pencils, and add some color in areas where I think I lost some. So I can just go in there with the pencil and then use a wet brush. Let me see if I still have some water here. And I can add color if I would want to. As you can see, they are really very intense. And the benefit of alcohol ink, of course, one of the benefits is that it's permanent. And that's also a benefit of the Derwent Inktense pencils, that when they are dry, they are permanent too. So you can see that I kind of fixed a little area here that I didn't really like. But yeah, I really like the details here, especially the small ones, like it's like little cracks in ice. So that's the first one. And I'm going to show you another one. So again, I'm going to apply ink. And here I'm using a clover. And I'm going to add some vineyard. So you can do this like very random, or you can do stripes or whatever. Of course, that is going to influence the way your print looks a little bit. So you can play with that. A little bit of purple twilight here. And again, I have to spread the ink with my brayer. So there might be still a little bit of the previous ink colors on my brayer. I did brayer it off on the paper, but still there might be some left on the brayer, which might reactivate and also show up in there, because alcohol ink will always reactivate when it touches new alcohol ink or even just plain alcohol. So your tools, if you don't clean them and you use them again with alcohol ink, the colors that are already on there will also show up in your next print. But I kind of like that. I like the surprise and I like the extra color in there. But if you don't want that, you have to clean your tools and you have to use alcohol in order to clean them. You will not get alcohol ink from your tools with just soap and water. So instead of just randomly placing the cling film on my plate, I'm going to make kind of lines, like horizontal lines, by pushing the film together with my fingers. And then I'm going to push them down. So I also get like the little smaller wrinkles in between these lines. And what I aim to get is a print like this or like this, which is more with lines. So it's a different pattern than the one I did first. So this is to show you that you can actually kind of influence how your print is going to look by playing with the cling film on your plate. And again, this one will have to sit around for a while to dry, but I also made a sample of that earlier today. And in this one, you will notice, you can already see it through the plastic, that this plate is really yellow. So this one has been used with alcohol ink before, especially with the yellows and the oranges. And I'm going to remove the plastic. So as I said, it will not affect any future prints, but the downside is that you can't really see the colors as they are on your plate. So you can see here on my plastic that it's mostly purple, blue and purple, but it doesn't look like that on the yellow plate. So
so Birgit, they're asking, how long does it take to dry?
Well, it depends a little bit on the circumstances in your room. So if it's like really warm, it will dry a little bit faster, and it also depends on how much ink you put on the plate. So if you have a lot of ink on the plate, of course, it will take longer to dry. And also if the areas where the plastic is are bigger, then more ink can pile up underneath, and then it will take longer to dry in certain areas. So you can have areas underneath the plastic that are already dry because there's not a lot of ink. But then when you lift it up and you have like a bigger area somewhere in the middle, it suddenly can start to run again because that area is not dry. So if you touch it in the larger areas and it's not moving underneath the plastic, you can assume that it's dry. But if you want to be really, really sure, then I would say maybe an hour, and then it should be dry. But as I said, usually I just prepare a couple and then I leave them to dry overnight. So I'm absolutely sure that they are dry.
Okay.
On the other,
so there is a follow-up question. They want to know if you use the ink on the plastic wrap to use it over again.
well, I do use the plastic wrap again because as you can see, this has quite some ink on it. So if I make a new print, I could use, for instance, just some light blues and then put this cling film on top, and this will reactivate and transfer to the plate. So I would get the purple into the light blue ink on my plate. So you can definitely use it a couple of times, but as long as you're like in the same color scheme, then it will be fine. But at some point when you start using, for instance, also oranges and yellows together with this, then it will get muddy and not bright colors anymore, and then you just have to throw it away. But yeah, you can definitely use it a couple of times, no problem.
Great.
So again, I'm going to roll out some paint, and I have a feeling that this is a little bit of this is going to be a boring print if I'm using only white, because as I looked at my my cling film, it looked as if it was like one solid purple color. So I'm going to add some medium magenta to give it a little bit more. And again, I'm rolling it out on a separate sheet of paper until my brayer is completely covered with paint. And I'm going to make sure that my layer of paint is like really, really thin. So I'm going to roll off a little bit more of that paint. Then place my paper on top and rub it. And now let's see how this one worked out. And again, a little area that didn't pick up, but still pretty print. Okay, so this is the simplest ways of using alcohol ink and cling film on the plate and get those frosty prints. But another fun thing to do is, and I'm going to use this plate, but I'm going to clean it because there's still some paint on it, and I don't want any paint underneath my alcohol ink because it might react differently on some paint than it will on the plate. So I'm just going to clean my plate with baby wipe. And then I'm going to show you another thing that you can do, and that is, where is it here? Using bubble wrap. So for this print, I used giant bubble wrap. And the fun thing is that you get the frosty areas only in the areas where you have the actual bubble, and you don't get any details in the areas where the plastic is higher. because it's not touched by the plastic. Does that make sense? So I'm going to show you. Let's see. I'm actually going to use this one, which is not the usual bubble wrap, but I'm pretty sure that this will also work. And if it doesn't dry on time for me to reveal today, then I will show it tomorrow on my Instagram feed, but I'm just going to make one. Let me see. I'm going to.
Birgit, while you're doing that, they asked, if the paper sticks to the plate like it did when you were pulling that last print, does that mean that there wasn't enough paint, or should they leave the paper longer? So they were just like thinking about the paper being stuck to the plate.
My paper was not stuck to the plate. It should feel kind of like, it's like, I'm not really sure how to explain it. It should feel as if it's like vacuum or something.
Like suction or something?
Yeah, exactly. That's the word, suction. Like you really need some strength. That's crazy word, but you know what I mean, to pull it up, because if you can really easily pull it up, then you have too much paint, because then it's not, the paper is not sticking to the plate, and it should actually stick to the plate in order to lift up everything, every layer from the plate. And if it pulls up really easily, then it means that you're only pulling up the top layer of whatever product is on your plate, and not the areas that are dried underneath that wet layer. So it should actually stick a little bit.
Okay. Perfect.
And what you could even do, and I can't do that now, of course, because I don't have the time, but what you could actually do is, when you put the paper on there, you could leave it on until the product underneath the paper is completely dried. So if you don't wait long enough, if you wait only until it's like partially dried, then your paper will tear when you lift it up. But when you leave the paper on until everything is completely dry, then you can lift up the paper and you will definitely pull up everything underneath. So if you have trouble with the amount of paint on the plate to create a good print, then you just leave everything to dry, because even if you have a little bit thicker layer of paint, then it will still pull up that bottom layer because everything is dry. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I'm putting this on top, and I did the same with the bubble wrap, but because it's not like staying down the way the cling film is, I usually put a book on top. So I'm just going to see if I have a place where I can put this for now with a book on top, because otherwise I will not get that wrinkle effect. Okay, but I do have one here. Let me see, where did I put it? Here, with the larger bubble wrap. And so this has been lying with a book on top all day, and this should be okay. So let me remove the bubble wrap. Oh, pretty.
You can tell it's already going to be beautiful.
But I never do that until I actually pull the print, because if I do something wrong with my paint, I can still totally mess it up, right? So it isn't a pretty print until it is an actual print. Okay. And that's something, I mean, people are sometimes saying to me, your prints are always perfect, but that's absolutely not true, because on Instagram I only show the ones that actually succeed, right? As most people. And
no, that's not what you do. They all turn out
that
perfect.
is absolutely what I do, and that's my biggest fear in live sessions like this, that I totally mess up my prints, and everybody's like, you see, you can also not do it. No, it's actually good if I think it's okay if I mess up some prints in a live session, because then people can actually see that it happens to everyone, and that not every single print always turns out perfect. I mean, I do get quite a lot of good prints, but definitely not all of my prints are perfect. And I'm sure Marcia can say the same, and Tanya can say the same, and everyone who is gel printing on a regular basis can say that everybody has failures every now and then. And I actually have the feeling that this is going to be one of them, because yeah, because I can, and I will tell you why. Because I pulled up my rubbing paper, and usually when the print is going to be really good, I can already tell, because then these edges are clean. So my rubbing paper already picked up all of the paint of these little areas around the paper. And as there is still paint there, I'm afraid the same is going to happen with the paper of my actual print. I'm not sure, but I think so. But anyway, then my story proves to be true. I also sometimes mess up. And here you can see, as I said, too much paint. So I could not pull up all of the ink, but you get the idea, right?
It's still very pretty.
This is a not so perfect print, and this is a perfect print. But still, if I would use this as collage material or background for an art journal page or whatever, there's going to be some stuff on top anyway, right? So who cares?
Yeah, it looks
it. I like it anyway.
Yeah. Somebody asked, have you ever used clear gesso or iridescent on the plate to pull the print?
I have used clear gesso, and I also have used a matte medium, and they both work. With gesso, it depends a little bit on the brand that you use. Some gessos have a little bit of grain in them, because they are supposed to hold the paint, right? They are primer for your canvas, and they are supposed to hold the paint. So they have a little bit of grain in it. And that you might see it actually in your print, that you get these like little tiny white dots, because it didn't pick up the paint or the ink or whatever. When you use a matte medium, that is like really smooth, like a matte medium or a gel medium basically is an acrylic paint without the pigments. So it's kind of working the same way as an acrylic paint does. And so, yeah, you can absolutely use it to pick up basically any print. So if you don't want to change anything in the color, then, and what I usually do is I use the white paint, because I don't want to change anything of the color. But what if you, for instance, want to print on a colored background, and you have open areas in your print? Then you can use a matte medium, because then the open areas will show the color of your paper, right? So if I print on white paper, I usually use white acrylic paint to pull the prints. But if you want to print on paper that already has something on it, you can definitely use a clear gesso or a matte medium. Okay. I wasn't really sure how much time I would need to make these prints, so I actually have a bonus print, and some of you might have seen it on my Instagram already a while ago. And I thought if I have time, I will actually show how I made it. So that's this one, the snowflake, with the cling film wrinkles inside of the snowflake and no wrinkles outside of the snowflake. And I'm going to show you how I created this. And what I did is I took some clear acetate sheets. In this case, I used the Recollections clear acetate sheets. And I printed a snowflake from my computer. And if you look for snowflake outline or something like that, then you will find tons and tons on the internet, and you can just print one out. And I put the acetate sheet on top of it and just traced it with a black Sharpie. And then I cut it out using a craft knife. And then what I did is I applied the alcohol ink like I did in the previous 3 prints. But instead of putting the cling film straight on top, I first put my handmade mask on top. So it has this open area in the shape of a snowflake, and everything else is covered by the plastic sheet. Yeah, can you still follow me? Yeah, okay. So, and once I have the mask or the stencil on top of my ink, I put the cling film on top. So you only get the wrinkles in the open area of the mask. Now I'm going to remove that cling film. And underneath is my handmade mask that I'm now also going to remove. And this is funny because in my other print, this one, there was actually the ink that was underneath the stencil actually stayed on the plate. And this time my stencil pulled up all of the ink, which means that there will be no ink, no color around my snowflake. So it's going to look different than this one. I do have a stain here that I now obviously don't want there. So I'm going to remove that with a baby wipe for as far as I can. And I'm also going to remove this little area down here because that's there because my stencil wasn't covering the entire plate. It was a little bit smaller than the plate. Okay, now I'm very curious. Maybe I should use a color then instead of white to pull up this print. So this is mostly purple. Let's use the baby blue, the light blue permanent, and just see what happens. And again, I'm rolling out my paint on a different sheet.
So Birgit, they wanted to know, somebody asked, could you show them how much paint to roll on the plate? But I see you're covering your brayer first. So yeah, they're trying to get a sense of how little paint.
Yeah, well, you should actually see what's underneath the paint. Your image or your pattern or whatever you need. And it's actually a matter of trying. You have to try because I can't give you exact measurements of paint because it depends on the brand of paint you're using. It depends on the circumstances in your room. about how quick those your paint is drying and all that kind of stuff. So you actually would have to try and figure out how much paint you need to get a good pull. But what you in general can say is when you pull your print and your plate is clean, then you use the right amount of paint. So if there's anything left on your plate, then you either use too much paint or not enough paint. And this is going to be a big disaster. And now I can actually show you what I just meant. So this would have been a really nice print if it had worked out. But what I said about the paint, and I can now show, as you can see, there is still ink on the plate. But on top of the ink, there's also a little bit of paint. If I would have had only ink on the plate, then I would have used too little paint. But if there is still also some paint on the plate, then I have used too much paint. Because as I said before, the paper will only pull up the top layer if you have too much paint. Because it's simply just not sticking to the bottom layer. Does that make sense? So if there's still paint on your plate, then there was too much paint. But you really have to try with your own paint and in your own circumstances how much paint you need.
Mm-hmm. But it was interesting because you showed us before that you could see the image underneath the paint.
Yeah.
And
still,
I think that was really a good visual, but really you would almost want to see it more than what you showed us.
Yeah, maybe. And you know what also happened is that I usually, as I said before, I usually use white paint.
Oh,
and,
yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
It could be that this color needs even less paint.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But I usually, I sometimes add a little bit of color in my white, but my main color with pulling prints is almost always white. So I'm so used to using white that I kind of know how much paint I need to pull a good print. But as I said, even knowing how much paint I need, I sometimes also mess up my prints. That just happens, and you can't always tell why. Maybe I don't know, but maybe there was only a little bit of ink on the plate, and maybe it was even too dry to pull. I don't know. I already said when I pulled up the stencil that it was weird that there was no ink underneath the stencil, right?
Yes, yes.
Where in this print, the entire area around the snowflake was ink.
Mm-hmm.
So in this print, the ink didn't pull with the stencil, and this time it did. And why? I have no idea.
Yeah.
So sometimes you get a lucky shot, sometimes you get surprised, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. And you just have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
When you do gel printing just isn't exact science. You cannot predict exactly how your print is going to look and what is going to work. And you just have to go with the flow and be happy with whatever you get.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it is, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I just keep printing a layer on top of a layer and on top of a layer until I have something that I like.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not like I'm going to throw this away now. I mean, I can just add more layers of paint on my plate and just keep printing. And if I use colors that are a little bit transparent, I will still see little bits of my first print showing through, and it could become a really interesting and nice and fun print where I now think, what am I going to do with it? But that doesn't mean that it's unusable or anything like that. So that's maybe the most important lesson here. Don't be I don't know the English word, but I would say unencouraged.
I would say frustrated. Don't be too frustrated.
Yeah, and also don't give up. Don't think after doing 1 or 2 prints and that don't work out, this is not for me, or I can't do it, or I'm doing something wrong, because I made so many prints over the years. And if you're just starting out, especially when you're just starting out, how can you expect to be perfect right away with something that is actually, on one hand, very easy? Everybody can gel print, but on the other hand, if you want specific things, then it can be tricky and it can be difficult. So yeah, you just have to be gentle on yourself and just have fun. Right. And every now and then you just have to sit down and print just because of the printing, and not with a goal in your mind. You should not sit down and gel print and say, okay, now I'm going to make this or that. You should sit down and say, okay, I'm going to have fun gel printing, and just create a whole bunch of prints for an hour or 2 hours. And there will definitely be a couple of beautiful prints, and there will also be some that you don't like. That's how it is.
Yes.
So I think I covered all of the ways that you can make these frosty prints with the cling film. And are there any questions? Are there any questions that I can answer right now?
So somebody just asked about, could you use the, I'm trying to find it, but use the snowflake as a mask? I think they're talking about the center part.
Oh, yeah, of course. So I was lazy and I just cut the middle and then used my scissors to cut it out. But if you are using your craft knife and you're doing it really nicely, and you keep the snowflake in one piece, then you can do the same as I did with the stencil. This is actually a stencil, and the part that comes out of it is the mask, and you can definitely use the mask and do the same. Then you would have the wrinkles around the snowflake, and your snowflake would be solid. So
and then somebody asked, are we planning on doing an image transfer class soon? Honestly, I don't remember, but somebody's asking about that they saw it. You do it probably in Frankfurt. Interesting.
Okay. So I would like to do that, but we would have to look into it because of copyright issues.
Okay. Yes, we do have to.
So if you want to do image transfers with magazines and stuff like that, then it is a gray area, and we don't want to. Maybe we don't want to go in there, and so we have to find out if we can.
Okay, I'll get on that.
Okay. Okay, I think then if there are no more questions, then this is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And I hope to see you again already, I think, next week, February 4th, I think. So that would be next week.
No, it's February 1st.
February 1st, that's is that also Tuesday, next week Tuesday?
Here,
I think so.
Yes.
And we're going to make printing tools with hot glue. And that is also going to be a fun class. So I hope you join me again then. And until then, have a good day, evening. Bye-bye.